Hey, it's Micah Thompson here with my Module 3 discussion-based assessment. I was given the statement to respond to. The current banking system is broken. Would be better off going to a system of cash transactions. Personally, I disagree with this statement. I know that there's some issues with banks that people have. There's fees. They're prone to financial crises, like look at the Great Depression, and not everyone has the same access to loans, but it really is a core system of the modern American economy. And even even though the banking system has multiple flaws, returning to just cash would create more economic problems that it would actually solve. So we're going to look at banks, and banks use money. So let's take a look at why money exists. So in ancient times, before the invention of the concept of money, the world or civilizations ran off a barter system where you trade a good, like maybe apples or something for oranges. Trade, some guy's producing apples, he wants oranges, he trades his apples, get oranges, the guy that's producing oranges gets the apples. Or conversely, some worker, he trades, I'll come work at your orange farm if you give me 20 oranges a month or something like that. And so it's you can trade labor too in it. It's not super efficient because it doesn't allow for a huge market. You can't have specialized labor in it, because let's for example, someone like a computer specialist in a barter economy, they're not really going to have anything um, of value to trade, uh, or it would be inefficient to, without like networks of individuals working together on a project and getting paid with something like money. Uh, Speaking of money, let's talk about what the function of money is. So, money is a representation of value. Um, it's a symbol that is assigned purchasing power, and it's really a powerful thing because it has the ability to like shape an economy. It tends to work better in like a national or like local basis. It doesn't do too well globally. Let's see. So yeah, cash is just a representation of value. Let's talk about. So when people get paid in cash, they need somewhere to store the cash, and that's why we have banks. Banks protect money from theft and disasters. If you had like 50 grand live in your house, someone might come in and steal your 50 grand, so you put it in the bank because you want it to be secure. the uh, the banking system isn't the same now as it was. Uh, it changed after the Great Depression to prevent bank runs and restore trust. Um, and that eliminates one of the biggest maybe drawbacks of a bank, is that it's severely regulated now. There's like failback systems, bailout systems, and since the bank got reformed after the Great Depression, no insured person who uses a bank has ever lost money to bank failure. I found that on outside research, and I thought that was a pretty cool fact to sing. So, um, banks have lots of positive things that they do for the economy that without um, there would be severe issues. Banks, they take the money that you deposit, and they transform your savings, and they actually invest into other things. They invest into companies. They send loans out, and that just really gets the economy going sometimes because there's more liquidity. uh, you know, they support technological advancement too, because if a bank decides to invest in maybe some life-saving medical research, that innovation is getting done because a depositor put their money in the bank and entrusted the bank to keep their money safe and do with their bank, and it just increases the efficiency and strength of the economy. Um, if we're talking about the idea of going away with banks, we need to talk about like if the banking system is actually broken, because that's the main thing. If you're going to take away the banks, you need a good reason for it to be broken, and I do not think that there is. Uh, there are problems. The I was like 1 year old at the time, but the 2008 financial crisis, uh, I did some research outside of it, and it was mainly caused by risky lending and really poor regulation. Um, it resulted in the Frank Dodd Act, which increased like banking oversight, like making sure that we had good leaders making good choices about our banks. So this shows my main point that banks are deeply interconnected with the economy, and that the total reward of taking away banks would outweigh the risks. So I talked about all the different things that banks can do to improve the economy, and when those are taken away, there's no real benefit. You don't have a place to store your money. Your money's not being invested in other things while being kept safe at the same time. It's just an all-around bad, and it's not like banks are this like total lost cause. The last few times there's been issues with the bank, government intervention has prevented the total collapse of the banks. So I just really don't see a case for taking away the banks. And if we did take away the banks, there would be a lot of problems with having a cash only economy. You can't regulate where the cash is going without banks. That would lead to a whole bunch of issues with crime. Imagine criminals just being able to take their money wherever they want, or you know fraud would be out of control. Money laundering, all of that. If cash is untraceable and can't be regulated, then it just provides a bunch of room for people to do what people do and act selfishly. Uh, According to the U.S. Treasury, to support that, cash-heavy systems increase money laundering and tax evasion, which are already issues but would be exacerbated by having no bank. Additionally, with banks, they provide a lot of the services that for the government. Without banks, you wouldn't have tax collection, you wouldn't have Social Security, and emergency relief would be really slowed. And that goes without saying that, just challenges in our everyday daily life. Maybe we don't want to look at the big picture. Maybe we want to look at the small picture. If you have a debit card, if you use online banking, without a bank, that's all gone. You just have your cash. That's all you got. You got to use it. You can't look at your payroll. There's no good way to track credit. There would be, but it would be way more inefficient than just a computer system. And it would really harm low income workers and rural communities without some of these things. There's examples to support what I'm saying all over the world. So countries with weak banking systems, they often experience inflation, corruption, economic instability. I want to say Syria has had issues with this because they don't have a strong national government. They don't have a strong bank system, and so there's just room for all this corruption in officials from, there's a civil war, every side of the civil war, it's just very corrupt. A study done by the International Monetary Fund links strong financial institutions to long-term economic growth. So if a country has good financial institutions that can manage money, can oversee it, their economy is going to benefit from it. And there's no benefit, provable benefit from not having a bank. So I just like to reiterate my points. The banking system, it has its issues, and we've seen that with various financial crises, but it's nothing that the government or bank oversight can't handle. The few times it has, there's been huge reforms into the banking system to make it super safe, and taking that away would just not be worth it. Banks enhance money and they support economic stability. They help track money flow. If you want a solution to the problems with banking, you just keep advocating for reforms. Keep advocating for regulation. Regressing back to cash only transactions is not the way to go, especially in this digital age. That's another big point I just like to add in here before I close. Because we live in the age of the internet, it would be so inefficient compared to what we have now to not use banks, because banks run the majority of online commerce. So if we don't have that, then you want to buy something from a store that ships from Europe, you're going to have to go to Europe and actually go to the store. So there's no good point for that at all, for taking away banks. Thank you for your time. Thank you for teaching the class. I've enjoyed being in the class. Have a good one.